Hello fellow Earthlings, it's Libs, and today I'm going to be doing my June reading wrap-up. It is so wintry at the moment that I cannot feel my fingers. It's fun time. So I read 10 books this month again, which I'm excited about. You guys know I don't normally read so many books in a month, but I have my first uni break in about 3 years, so I'm making the most of actually having time to read. So I read 10 books. That was 3,235 pages, and most of the books I read were, no surprises here, reflective and emotional. The majority were either slow or medium pace, and this is probably the most evenly split month in regards to page number. I read 3 books that are under 300 pages, 3 books over 500 pages, and then 4 books in between. And the majority of books this month were fiction, and my most read genres were historical and literary. And my average rating was 3.94 stars. Okay, so I think I'll start with the books I decided not to give a star rating to. The first of these books is A Burst of Light by Audre Lorde. This is a collection of her essays. I read The Master's Tools Will Never Dismantle the Master's House last year, and I loved it. I also read her memoir, which I've now forgotten the title of, but that was fantastic. It was one of my favourite books of last year, so I wanted to read some more. A new spelling of my name. It's a new spelling of my name. I wanted to read more from her, so I picked this book up, and I did really like some of the essays. My issue was that the vast majority of the book is talking about when she's very sick, and I don't handle illness very well, so it was a complicated read for me. I didn't enjoy that, so I decided not to rate it because I can't give it an objective opinion. But I do like how she writes. I like a lot of her essays. I just don't like dealing with particular illnesses sometimes. And the other book that I didn't rate this month was Growing Up Disabled in Australia. This is an anthology written by all kinds of Australian authors. I really enjoyed this. I just feel weird giving it a rating. This book is about what the title says it's about. I think it's a really fantastic collection of both really uplifting stories, but also some very sad stories, and then some very angry stories. It does a really good job at balancing all these different things and highlighting some really amazing writers. I think it's fantastic. I just think it is... Don't power through it like I did. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I think if you're going to read this, I know Jen Campbell has been reading this book slowly for a couple of months now, and I think that's probably a better way to approach this book, just because it is a lot. And again, a lot of them are really uplifting, but there are some that are stories in here that are very sad and make you really angry at the medical system in this country and how bad some doctors are at listening to patients. I'm really glad I read this. It is fantastic. Just, it is a lot to read all at once. So I had 1 2-star read this month, and that will not be a surprise to anyone that it was in Watermelon Sugar. This book, I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of a dystopian, but it's also... it is a dystopian, but it just didn't really make any sense to me. You've got this place where there's all this watermelon syrup, and this place called Eye Death, and then there's this place where there's all these missing objects and the people who guard the missing objects very strange, and I don't know, it's really short, and so I didn't grasp anything because it's so abstract, so it wasn't really for me. It was just probably the most bizarre book I've read this year, and just wasn't really into it. I had one 3.5 star read, and that was Nightcry, which is a short graphic novel. I really liked the art style. It again was quite abstract. It's about this town where there are these people who go missing, and you've got this girl who runs like I don't remember what kind, like it's kind of a bookstore, but it's also a lot of anime and things like that, and she summons a demon to grant her a wish, but she doesn't know what that wish is going to be, so it's just her hanging out with this demon. But there's a lot of abstract stuff going on. I just think it probably needed to be revised just a little bit more to make it a bit more clear with what's going on. But I did still really enjoy it. I loved the art style. It was all very pretty, and who doesn't love a demon with pink hair? I have I have 3 4-star reads. The first is Me, Stories of My Life by Katharine Hepburn. I read this one for uni. This is kind of like her memoir. It's written like little chapters based on particular events or people in her life, which is a really cool way to kind of explore Katharine Hepburn, and if you are a fan of her, I would really recommend reading this memoir. It's just very interesting to get inside her head. I read this for uni. I was doing a major project on Katharine Hepburn, so I wanted to reference her memoir, and I'm really glad I did it. I'm glad that I read this. It was really hard to find because they don't print it in Australia anymore, so I had to pay way too much to get it shipped here, but I'm glad I did. It was a fantastic read. Then I read A Gentleman in Moscow, which is it used to be a really popular book. I think it still is relatively popular, but it doesn't have quite the same hype anymore. And this is about a count in Russia who is placed under house arrest in this really luxurious old hotel. And it's just kind of exploring his life as he's here, as he questions things and as he defends his country from people who would criticize it. And it's just a lot of layers, and it teaches you a lot about Russian history, which I really, really enjoyed. And the final 4-star book I read this month was Pachinko. I mean, I loved it, but also it is sad. It is a lot. I listened to the audiobook, and that was... I seem to have read a lot of books this month where when a character dies, it's kind of like a throwaway line or two, and if you're not paying attention, you miss it. I was doing the dishes, listening to the audiobook, and I completely missed a character death, and then was completely surprised when it was mentioned later that they had died. But it's a really, really fantastic read. It's sort of a multi-generational story. There's this young woman in Korea who gets pregnant, and she marries this minister, and they move to Japan, and it follows her children and what it means for them to be Korean in Japan. And I don't know how to describe this book. It's beautiful, but it's so sad. I know there's either a movie or a mini-series or something being made that's probably already out that I'm interested to see. I want to see how it's adapted, because I feel like that could be really interesting. And I like to see it because I feel like some of it didn't go over my head, but it's just so much to take in that I feel like I need to, see it to just make sure I grasped everything I needed to. I have 2 4.5 stars, and the first is The Wolf Den. This is one of the bigger books I read this month. It's about this brothel in Pompeii and the slave girls who are forced to live and work in this brothel, and it's mostly about this one girl trying to figure out how she can get herself out of this situation. And it is obviously another really sad one. I think I've just read a lot of really sad, quite tense books this month, and I'm feeling drained. So if I don't sound as excited or happy about them, that is why. I'm looking forward to reading hopefully a few lighter books in July, because I think I need it. But this is a beautiful book. The story is crafted so well, all the characters feel really unique, and it just shines a light on a history that is often forgotten about when thinking about the ancient world and Pompeii and things like that. So I really, really loved what this book did, and I'm excited to read the sequel, which came out a month or two ago. And the final 4.5-star book I read was Restless by William Boyd. I've been wanting to read this book for years. I saw the mini-series, I think, when it came out, and I've wanted to read it ever since. I obviously really enjoyed this book. I actually think I preferred the mini-series, just because I think it did a better job at realising that if you're reading this book, you're probably here for the spy thriller and less about the daughter. So it's about this woman in the 70s who finds out that her mother has been lying about her name and that her mother was a spy in World War II. And so it goes back and forth between their points of view, and you get to see the World War II thriller, which is really, really cool. And that's the bit I think everyone's there for. I'm not as interested in the daughter's storyline. There are definitely some really cool aspects there, but I think particularly in the first half of the book, her chapters are really stretched out, and they don't really need to be. That's not what you're there for. Once you're really invested in the story, you don't mind so much, but until you're really invested, she's not the most interesting character to read about. And then I had one 5-star read, and this book I finished 12:30 this morning, and that is All the Light We Cannot See. Boy, I've had this book on my TBR for years, and I finally read it. And I want to say I loved it. It's beautiful. It's probably one of the most beautiful books have read so far this year, besides On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This book follows the lives of Marie, who is a blind French girl during World War II, and it also follows Werner, a German boy who becomes a part of, I guess, Hitler Youth and everything, but he's not necessarily, he doesn't really think critically. He's not invested in it, but he's not standing up against it. And it kind of follows their lives and how they come to meet. And it is so beautifully written. All the chapters are really, really tiny. They're like about 3 pages. Longest, I think, is 5 pages each, and it goes back and forth, so the pace feels really, really fast. And I sped through this book. It's over 500 pages, and I think I read it in 5 days, which for me is really impressive. But I loved it. I think it was just so beautifully written. Also very sad, but I think I had a different idea of where the book was going. For some reason I thought it was a romance, so I think I was just waiting for them to meet so much that I kind of didn't take everything in as well as I probably should have. So don't go into this thinking it is a romance, because it's not a romance. And I think I was just confused at the end because it didn't meet my expectations, but I think whoever originally recommended this to me probably sold to something slightly different from what it actually is. But it's fantastic. I loved it. 5 stars. Okay, and that is it for this video. Let me know what books you've been reading through June in the comments down below, and I will see you next time. Bye.